So a lot of people have been asking if Dragon King Sharun is actually worth pulling for now. At first glance, she seems pretty decent, right? Because she actually does well against the strong meta units. For example, Death Dealer Rig with his AoE sleep kind of gets hard cucked by this Lullaby for Waves S2 because you can dispel all of those sleeps and then also activate Cascade on your team, which is going to actually give you fixed damage. And this works on AoE. So if you have like Rebellion or just anything with a AoE attack on their S1, it will actually proc Cascade on everyone, which is a ton of fixed damage. You get 10k value right there, and this seems very strong on paper. Now, the only problem is if you pick Dragon King Sharun and they don't actually activate their prevent movements ability, she becomes kind of useless. Now, I say that because her S3, although it's pretty decent because it has debuffs and a 2-turn buff duration, removal, the thing is, these debuffs, they're just normal, right? You can get this on a lot of other units. Decreased attack for damage dealing classes, and then decreased defense for Knights and Soul Weavers. Seems pretty decent. You're most likely not going to even land this on most Soul Weavers, and depending on your effectiveness, you might not even land this on some Knights. You might have to actually go for 200% effectiveness for that. And if you do that, you'll give up way too much bulk or speed. So most people have her around like 160, which makes it so that you can actually miss that debuff on Knights. So this is mostly just going to be a decreased attack debuff most of the time. And if you think about it, if she is only really there for a decreased attack debuff, because her S1 is a stun, which doesn't really do anything because the chance is so low unless you soul burn. And honestly, it's pretty hard to actually land this stun because it's only 40% without souls. Then why not just use Conquer Lilius, right? Conquer Lilius kind of does the same thing as her, but better. Obviously she doesn't counter like Death Dealer Rain, stuff like that, although she kind of does because you can outspeed him. But what I'm trying to say is she also has decreased attack on everyone, right? And she also has Vigor, which is one of the best buffs in the game. She also has a ton more damage with her S1, and she has her S2 for utility with the Barrier and Provoke. So basically what I'm trying to say is, in most scenarios, what actually ends up happening is Dragon King Sharun just ends up S3ing, and she really doesn't really get too much value out of her S2, because even if you pick her into those units, they can actually just sit there and do nothing, right? Like, for example, a lot of people were saying she's pretty good into Arrowell. The thing is, if you're fighting against Guild Wars, yes, these units are going to get countered. Arrowell is everywhere in Guild Wars defense. You'll be able to actually activate your S2. But in RTA, they're never going to use their S3, right? They're just going to wait for Sharun to die because Arrowell has way more sustain than Dragon King Sharun. Dragon King Sharun has no healing. Arrowell has some healing in her S1. She also actually gets, this escort buff, which will make her not live longer. She'll actually die quicker, but she's built on super high health anyways, so it's a lot easier to live. Whereas Dragon King Sharun, right, she needs a lot of stats. She needs effectiveness, she needs some speed, she needs some decent bulk, and honestly she wants some effect resist to prevent getting CC'd as well, so you can actually land your debuffs because you're not going to take the first turn with her because her speed is way too low. Her speed tier is at 106, which makes it pretty hard to take the first turn with her. You have to pick her into slower teams, which makes it even harder to actually use her. And also you're going to see her best artifact is Sharun's artifact, and there's not really too many good Soul Weaver artifacts for Soul Weavers that, put debuffs up. And because of that, you're going to be limited on what you can choose. Now, you can choose Guardian Ice Crystals, it'll be fine as well. But Dragon King Sharun wants to play a bit more aggressive, it feels like, because if she doesn't really do anything in the first 2 turns with her S3 and S2, she is kind of useless, right? Like I mentioned. So honestly, I think this unit, not really worth your pity. I'd say that she's like a below average unit. If I had to rate her out of like 10 stars for how strong she is for PvP, I'd give her like a 3 to 4. I think I was pretty excited for her because she seems like a good unit against those annoying Death Dealer Rays. But honestly, even if Death Dealer Rays don't sleep you, they're still very strong because they can apply those Venoms and just be super annoying. So yeah, I think this unit is not really worth it. I've been testing her out a lot. I think a lot of people gave up on her, and me included. I find a lot of struggles to actually fit her into my team comps, right? If you pick her in World Arena, she either gets banned out, or they just don't pick any of those prevent movement units, or even if they do, which they can, they just won't use them, and they'll outvalue Dragon King Sharun in long fights, because yeah, Dragon King Sharun's value in long fights is not that great. Sure, she CR pushes herself by 50% with her S3, but her turns don't really mean anything, right? Her S1 isn't really game changing. You mostly are just waiting for your S2 to proc. So I think she's mostly a Guild Wars offense and arena offense unit. So because of that, you don't really need her because there's so many answers to units for Guild Wars, right? You don't even need her for Arrowell. There's a ton of other options. You can use literally like Meteor Calric or just be faster than Arrowells and you'll be fine with Conquer Lilius. In arena, same thing, you can just pick other teams. She's not going to really be good there. So I think she's mostly going to be a skip. But yeah, her animations do look amazing, so that's kind of what sold me. So if you're into her animations, you can go for her, but honestly, from a gameplay standpoint, she's just not that good in the current, like even if she was designed to be good in the current meta, she just doesn't really get that much value, so it's hard to actually use her. I think for pities and for ML 5 stars, because mystics are pretty hard to get still, you definitely want to go for units that are very game changing, like Abyss Fine, New Captain Landy, and Dragon King Sharun. Like most Soul Weavers, like ML 5 star Soul Weavers, or Knights even, they're going to be very hit or miss. They're either going to be very strong for a while, or just very weak. That's how support units work in all gacha games pretty much, not barring Epic 7, and she's one of those support units that just ended up not being that great. Now, we don't know what's coming after her. It's going to be a rerun. As soon as we get info on that, I'll let you guys know and put it on my channel, but for now, Dragon King Sharun, don't pull for her unless you really love her, and yeah, you have some time to save some Mystic Medals. I pitied her because kind of liked her animations, and I wanted to actually have a unit to have against Death to Array. But after testing her out, she still isn't that great against them. And this Cascade buff, if you get it up, it's so powerful. Not so powerful, but pretty powerful. But even then, like this 2500 fixed damage against super tanky units doesn't really do that much in a meta where we have so many bruisers. So on paper, this Cascade seems very strong, but it's only really good against like squishier units, and you don't really see that many of those squishy units in the current meta. So yeah, definitely skip, guys. If you guys actually pulled for her, let me know, guys, what you think about her. And if you guys disagree and think she's pretty good, also let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about her, and I'll see you guys next video.